All right, you guys about ready? Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is another off-season pod. This normally would be a pod where we're real excited about the upcoming signing day, which would be a week from today, but that world is behind us. I'm Steve.
Lucas.
Jay.
And we don't have Connor, but we have something a lot better. We have a special guest, Eli Letterman, of Sellout Crowd fame, his own podcast, his own notoriety, moving across the landscape. Kind of I guess you would say, what you were saying earlier, the most important journalist in all of OU sports.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Something better than Connor is all I need as a tag. I'm going to put that in the Twitter bio.
A big step up. Well, we appreciate you being here. We're gonna dive into some stuff, some off-season type stuff, our views, what we should be looking for in this off-season. It's a long time between now and spring ball, and then spring ball to fall camp, and then the season. We gotta somehow bridge that gap. So, I'll throw it out there. What do you guys think we should be thinking about and looking for as we try to not look in desperation, but try to look for meaningful pieces of news? We're still got transfer portal going on right now. What is the real important stuff that we should be following?
For me, it's what news there isn't, right? You always want kids to stay out of trouble. And for some reason, I don't worry as much under Venable.
Not for some reason. It's a better regime.
As other regimes. But I guess for right now, this time of year, that's what I'm looking at. No news is good news.
Yeah, same here for that. It sucks not getting to look forward to anything recruiting-wise going into the second signing day. And obviously with the transfer portal, for the most part, completely filled out. I guess we got the Washington lineman a couple days ago. Outside of that, you had a poll question about will we see another...
how many people will we
see the portal from here until spring?
And the majority was right at 50% answered 1 to 2 people. That was my answer.
I had 0.
0. What did you guys?
I think I went, was it 2 to 4?
1 to
2 to 3?
3 to 4, 5
Something
plus.
like that.
I
think we will, just because you're gonna have kids that are waiting to see where they're at on the depth chart, and so post spring, you're gonna have X number of kids that see where they're at, 3rd string, 4th string, whatever.
But there's a college rule, or each university has their own rule of you have to enroll by this point, this certain date after spring classes start, and if you don't, then you can't participate in the spring activities. So
why do it now?
Probably
why
past that date at this point, right?
Getting close if we're
it's
not.
like 2 weeks or something after school starts that you have to.
I think it's past. I think it was this past.
Like a couple days ago-ish. That sounds right.
Yes.
So,
well, we got a guy this
Sunday.
week, so...
Well, I think this is where like the modern world of the coaching carousel. That's what, a guy came from Washington. He only entered the portal after Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama. You saw all the Washington guys move, all the Alabama guys move. Michigan probably did a big part of keeping their guys intact by promoting Sharon Moore. I'd guess the flood of guys going into the portal is pretty light. So you're talking about whoever's left.
Right.
But can he participate, the Washington kid, can he participate in spring practices if he didn't enroll until after whatever that date was?
Now, I don't know I'm sure they can do a lot of magic in that compliance office. And that I know that the Garen Hatchett was flying to Norman on Tuesday.
Okay.
He committed Monday. It's Wednesday.
Yeah.
He flew into...
It could be a matter, too, of where you're at in your academic
Well, he's a 5th-year junior.
arena, so
Right.
It's all jumbled.
Is
At
he a
this
grad
point,
transfer?
Yeah. He's not.
Okay.
But at this point, between COVID years, between whatever
there's
gymnastics you can do,
Yeah.
they'll
He does
find a
gymnastics.
way.
We're really good at gymnastics.
Hey, great gymnastics program. I would wager to guess that whatever is required to get him into winter workouts, which is what's important if we're talking about football.
Right.
We're really not talking about academics, are we?
Yeah.
I'd imagine he'll be involved in the program, the off-season program, and then involved in spring camp.
Hoping
That's
spring
what matters.
games.
Yeah, he'll be there.
So do you have a guess, Eli, about how many players
Between now and the start of this...
and I think based on my poll, would that include the one?
wait, was this?
The poll was after he had already said.
It was? Okay. Okay.
That's why I said 0, because I thought he would be the
He'd
last.
be the guy. Okay.
I would think he'd be the last. It would be, when I say a surprise, not, I wouldn't be stunned if tomorrow there was a signing.
Right.
Looking out there or thinking about what they need, I would think they're pretty settled for now. But if there were another great offensive lineman or some stud, but if there were, everyone would be going after him.
For some reason, I thought it
think
was
that way.
a post-spring portal question.
Well, there's okay. Well, there's
'Cause that's
no.
what they will
I
add.
tried to structure it so it wasn't the post-spring portal question, thinking there is going to be. I would imagine, like we have in years past, we will push out a couple of guys, maybe 5, 4 or 5, something.
Yeah,
number
post
like
spring
that.
game, if a kid realizes
Post-spring.
he's
Yeah,
third or
that's
fourth
what I
on
was
the
And
depth
then
thinking.
chart.
welcome some others
Yeah,
in.
yeah. I didn't
that
answer that. I
opportunity.
answered it towards spring and not
Right. And that's how I.
And how many people do we have in the portal that can rescind? Like Grimes, we talked about, hasn't gone anywhere yet.
That's
Do we
the
have-
only
is he
one.
the only one that hasn't committed anywhere yet?
Seems right. Yeah.
But I don't think that he comes back. I mean,
Yeah. So, Eli, you got inside scoop. Give me your take, and we'll talk about ours. What's your take on the vibe of the program right now, and where things are headed? We got a new defensive. Is he officially coordinator?
For
So-
the pay.
Yeah, yeah.
Is he
yeah.
calling the plays? Who knows?
Yeah. So Zach's in, young talent. That's pretty awesome. What is your take on the vibe of the program as it stands compared to where we've been in a similar January situation in years past?
Well, compared to a year ago this time, I think you're feeling pretty good. Because this time last year, you're coming off 6 and 7, and it was sort of a run it back. It was losing some talented guys. You're talking about Marvin Mims, Anton Harrison, but feeling just, I mean, gauging you guys, not to turn the question back, but how are you feeling this time last year? Probably iffy after a 6 and 7
I mean, the
start?
homers over here were thinking we were going to go 12 and 1 or something ridiculous. But I mean, what was my 9 and 3? I think is what I had ours going into the.
I had us at
Season.
11 and 1, not
11
12 and 1, and then it
Well, you had us win the Big
increased
12
to 12 and 0, which all was in play. I mean,
Right.
to be honest, we were,
Well, but
very
that was
close.
yeah. I mean,
I think at this point last year, pretty positive, expectations rising,
optimistic after the Florida State
optimistic
performance.
after the Florida
Yeah.
State performance,
Offensively
and
especially.
looking at where we were with a lot of hope for defense too.
Yeah.
Like I would say, my takes on defense played out.
yeah.
That I thought we were going to rise to the next level, and
Well,
we
we were,
definitely
we were at
did.
the point of like, how much worse could it really be?
Yeah.
We've also got plenty of guys
Getting
with
better,
that extra
getting smarter.
experience.
Yeah.
And then we thought Kannick was really going to come on.
And we thought the
Stutzman.
schedule would be easier, I think, than it actually ended up being, even though it wasn't
Yeah.
really tough. I'm going to admit it wasn't really tough, but we thought it was going to be even easier than it ended up being.
Yeah.
Um,
But we thought with the Sawchuck Barnes Florida State situation that the offense output would be a lot better than it ended up being.
The run game.
Whatever the numbers end up barring
run
at the
game.
end, they didn't match the eye at the end of the season. And you really wondered from this point last year to how the season ended, what happened to the run game, especially.
mhm.
Well,
I think Jeff Lebby happened to the run game.
I think where you sit now is feeling this, whether you want to call whatever Brent Venables inherited as you want to say a rebuild or just picking up and getting his program off the ground, this now feels a lot more like Brent Venables' program. And we're all going to find out how that turns out. But this is now the Jackson Arnold era. This is Brent Venables hiring a new offensive coordinator, hiring a defensive coordinator who feels more like someone who's going to be, whether Zach Alley is directly calling plays or it's some sort of system, this feels more like a program, to borrow a crappy term, built in his image.
I think that's a great point. I think that's a really good point, that when you look at a coach, a brand new coach, brand new to head coaching, it's really not his until not only has he cleaned house and gotten his guys in and gone through a few recruiting cycles, but also changed some things, including changes he initiated. So he obviously brought in Ted Roof and now has graduated away from Ted Roof, if you will. He has changed and graduated away from Jeff Lebby. That, looking from the outside in, I think it's pretty clear that was a mutual decision all around about making that replacement. So it looks a little bit more like it's his animal, it's his baby.
You've basically got a defense coming back that, obviously there are Lincoln Riley guys still there, but you can't tell me that Danny Stutzman is not one of the faces of the Brent Venables era now.
Right.
Billy Bowman the same way. There's other guys like that. Jackson Arnold is the face of the program at this point, and everyone's gonna be on that ride. And that to me, you ask about like what's the story of this time right now is the lamest cop-out. You brought me in, and I'm going to tell you that Jackson Arnold's the story, but he is the story.
He is the story.
It's Oklahoma, and it's a brand new quarterback, and it's a 5-star quarterback, and the whole thing. This feels like Brent Venables' program now. Not that it wasn't the last 2 years, but that's
so than ever.
And everything reflects on him now. You can say, all right, Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman were Lincoln Riley guys, but this is everything here. They're the portal guys that Brent Venables has brought in. You're starting. It'll be early, but that 2023 class, which is his first true class, they'll at the very least be guys in the depth or competing to start.
Yeah.
Whether you want to talk Peyton Bowen or further on down. So this, to me, feels like they have got this in the place that you can judge Brent Venables on, and then we're going to find out. I mean, they're going to need time to develop certain spots. The defense coming back is really exciting. It's all measured against the SEC, which is good luck trying to guess where they're going to land everywhere or how the schedule is going to play out, how it matters in a 12-team playoff scenario. But this, to me, feels
the
like the
influx of defensive line as far as the freshmen coming in, David Stone and what's the other kid's name, Jackson.
Jake Jackson.
Yeah.
Those guys,
Nigel Smith.
Those guys would have never been here with an Alice Grinch defense.
No.
Those aren't the type of national top 300 guys or whatever the rankings are that would have even bothered showing up for a defense that performed like we had before Brent Venables.
I mean, PJ, the year before, ended up being, was he like the 7th overall player? Maybe that was one of his highest rankings.
Yeah.
The 7th overall.
Getting guys
David
like that
Stone's
completely changed
5th overall.
everything.
I mean, we haven't got defensive players like that in over a decade.
Well, I think picking up on something you were saying, Eli, is a good point. The few players we have that were from the prior Lincoln Riley era regime, they are remade in the Brent Venables style now. And he has put his mark on those guys and improved them and changed them in a way. You look back at prior transitions, he was an assistant coach. So when Riley took over, it's a little different, but it took a couple of years before you'd say this is a Lincoln Riley team. And that Lincoln Riley team was actually a little disappointing. When you look at the Bob Stoops transition, he brought in great changes. The only criticism that some John Blake apologists would say was he's doing it all with John Blake players. Now, he moved them all to different positions, including different sides of the ball. But it really wasn't until that 2001, 2002, 2003
quarterback from Utah
that he got his stamp of this is my team. And so now we are in an era of, to again look back at Bob Stoops, no excuses. This is Brent Venables' machine. And it lives or dies, succeeds or fails, and he has to be responsible for that in a way that you just can't apologize for it anymore. With anything, obviously a 6-7 is not going to be acceptable, but even a 10-2 with really disappointing losses in those two, and then a bowl game performance that it's hard to even evaluate that and say how that factors into it. That's no longer like you're feeding the monster, and the monster is going to demand more.
It's tough for me because of what time of year that the coaching changes happen. This will be Venables' 3rd season, obviously, and his 3rd recruiting class. But really, 90% of that first class, you just try and hold together. You add a couple of pieces to it that you find, because he had 2 weeks or 3 weeks before early signing period. So really, you've got one class coming into this season that's been on campus for a full year that are completely his players. I think more, and I'm not making an excuse at all for next season, but I think 25, you can fully, completely judge Venables as a coach.
2 full years in the SEC.
Because you've got
in
his
full
first
turnover.
real class of 100% players
Are
that he evaluated, he looked at, or in their junior season.
Yeah, junior, yeah.
Junior season. Yeah, the seniors will be a class he held together.
Right.
But, I mean, even with all that being said, next year's, gosh, who knows? To me, we've talked about it before. You might not have listened necessarily, but
Should have.
What do you think he gets his inside scoop from?
I tune in.
I think to us, me specifically, the offensive line is what is going to be the difference between 6 and 11 wins.
Yeah, everyone's keying in on
I mean,
that.
it's somewhere.
and
It's
you had Sam Mays on your podcast, and that was a really insightful look from the inside, from not just someone who was a former and successful offensive lineman, but he adds value in that he's not an OU alum and homer, if you will, and he is a very intelligent guy, as most offensive linemen are. He brought a lot of good information to it. I didn't agree with everything he said, but I agreed with quite a bit of what he said, and I thought all of it was really valuable, and he keyed in on the fact that is the critical area. He was a little bit more skeptical, I would say, as to how good they can be. And that's part of what, if I had disagreement, that was the disagreement area. I've got a little more hope that they can pull things together. But at the same time, that's where Bedenbaugh and that's the situation where they've got to prove themselves right now. Because like you say, Jay, this season is going to be make or break, probably based on that position group.
Well,
go ahead.
I agree. And I mean, yeah, so I work with Sam, and the best thing about Sam Mays is he's going to tell you like it is, or at least as he perceives it. And he's got expertise, and he carries the Oklahoma State tag, but he's not bringing that with him for better and worse. On my podcast, he spoke when OU had 3 transfer offensive linemen, and it was Spencer Brown, Michael Tarkin, and Febeshi Wiwu. Mm-hmm. That was a week before Garen Hatchett committed, and I spoke to him about Garen Hatchett, and we shot a little video the other day. He was relatively down on who the Sooners had brought in when you consider the context of replacing starters at all 5 spots, and really we'll include Savion Byrd here, of 6 starting caliber offensive linemen, guys that OU relied on in 2023. That's a huge hole, especially when you're going to the SEC. So when you're talking about the 3 guys they brought in, really only Spencer Brown has been a proven starter at the Power 5 level. And then you're talking Jacob Sexton, who I know in the program they're very high on, and it has been impressive. But past that, you're talking about some young, developing guys who they like, but are they ready for 2024 to start in the SEC? That would be a jump. But then you bring in a Garen Hatchett, and you feel a little bit better about it because the line starts to take shape. But that, if we're talking, it's about to be February 2024, offensive line is where you'd key in, because that determines how Jackson Arnold's first year goes, how Seth Luttrell's first year goes in his job here, how the running backs do. It extends everywhere, and even probably hits the defense in some way, shape, or form. That would be the group you could key in on right now and really evaluate, and at least have real questions about going.
So, Lucas, you made an interesting observation, I think, that is pretty well agreed on, that defensively, defensive line is loaded with some really good talent that comes in.
Young talent, yeah.
Young talent. Now, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, as I look at it, maybe I don't know my stuff as much as I need to really make this speculation, but to me, although every position group needs to work as a fluid unit, defensive line and the nature of defense is, if you've got a talent, like you look at what, going back a long time, Tommy Harris did, putting Tommy Harris on the field just is disruptive. And all you have to do in defense is, if you're that good, you just be disruptive and you can have a huge impact. Offensive line really has to gel as a full unit. They've got to work together as a team. And so even with a lot of good pieces of talent coming together, you got to put it together as one cohesive group that knows and works as a single, almost like a single player with multiple arms and multiple brains, not just a guy out on his own on an island making a big play. An offensive lineman can't just make a big play unless it's maybe opening up a hole. He's got to be helping his brothers to the left and right.
I think their biggest plays are not messing up on a play.
Right. You don't want to know their names.
Yeah. Like a corner. You don't want to hear a
It's
corner's
almost like
name.
cooking something or making a drink. You can put these ingredients in, but if you leave one out, it screws the whole drink up.
Right.
Or if you put too much of one in, it screws that drink up. So, yeah, what position is the Hatchet guy again? Is he going to play left tackle?
I'd
say right
guard is where
I'd say
right
he's right guard.
guard.
I bet
Okay.
Sexton's a left tackle.
And I think the right side of your line, really center to right, you'd have Troy Everett, you'd have Garen Hatchett and Spencer Brown. You feel good about that. You'd probably feel good, again, not knowing what it looks like in the SEC or how they gel, about Sexton on the left. And the guard spot's the place to figure out.
Well, the Tarquin kid played on the left side of the line at Florida and did much better on film on the left. He went to USC, and they put him at like right tackle, and he struggled. Didn't have a good year last year.
Well, their whole offensive line was trash.
Yeah, but I mean,
Caleb was running for his life the whole season.
Some players do have a left-right. It's a much better deal than whatever. So maybe he can be very comfortable at left guard, and maybe there is a solidifying 5 you've got.
I wasn't.
What about what was the North Texas kid's name?
Fabechi. Who
Sam doesn't think he's playing.
Well, and the thing about that one is he's a Seth Luttrell guy. He was a walk-on at North Texas, who then went on to start 20-some-odd games at North Texas. That says something. There's a piece, I mean, none of us know this. I'd have to talk to Fabechi himself. Some think he was hurt last year. That might impact the tape and the film. I think Sam's take on him was he didn't, you're watching a guy at North Texas. If he's going to play the Power 5, you want to see him at North Texas.
Just demolishing
guys. If he was hurt, that could impact that. But there's some thought that whether it's Michael Tarquin, I would doubt that they'd move Jacob Sexton inside. But you could move. There's some flexibility of these guys. That's why Bill Bedenbaugh makes the money he makes to develop any of these guys, but maybe to move guys to spots where they can get, something out of them, and that could be effective. But I think the offensive line, it's like in pass protection, you don't want to know their name because you don't want to know the guy who gave up his 3rd sack in a game.
Or jumped off sides. A difference this year, as good as this offensive line was at times, experience, what they struggled with, they protected Dylan Gabriel pretty well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What separates a good enough offensive line from a great one, and that's even before the SEC and talking about that, is can they get a push? I felt like this year's team with Oklahoma, they struggled. 3rd and 2 was not the given they needed it to be, and we all looked at the running backs, and that was its own problem at times. It kind of got better over the second half when Gavin Sawchuk came on, but they just couldn't get that push they needed. And so it'd be one thing for this brand new look offensive line to just be able to keep Jackson Arnold upright.
Well, we're on
another thing.
We're on the train of that being a Levy problem, and we could be way off.
Mm-hmm. Either the hope or the belief.
Right.
Yeah, it's some combination.
Listening to Gabe's podcast with Teddy, he would talk during the season. I don't know why they're running this scheme and not this other scheme, because the guys that they've got would be great at running this run scheme,
right.
and not and they go into the nuts and bolts of it, which
we talked a lot about RPOs about lack of your offensive line isn't sure what's happening. Is it a quick throw? Are we running it? What are we doing? And if it's black and white, what's going to happen on this play? And that we're running it left, and you just go do your job and push. Maybe that makes a difference in something.
They simplified the run game over the back half of the season. It happened to coincide with Gavin Sawchuk getting healthy, but also taking off and looking like the guy you saw in the Cheez-It Bowl.
Much better.
There's a million reasons why that could have been the case, but I know they went to some simpler stuff. Who knows what input Seth Luttrell had on that, Jeff Levy changing what they were doing, but that was a part of it, was getting simply simpler.
I was going to say, I was never a big Rain fan. Hopefully we get better at the center position. But when you're talking offensive line, it's not just those 5 guys. The tight end has a big part in running plays. And none of us thought Stogner did a good job this year. Even when Stogner was here before he went to South Carolina, as a freshman, we thought, oh, maybe he's going to come in and be the next Calcaterra, because Calcaterra had a good career until, the injuries. And so that's all we hoped for, was him to just slot in there and be close to what Calcaterra was. And then he got injured against Kansas, like a deep thigh bruise that went really bad. And then Braden Willis he's not a tight end. He's more of an H-back, but could do a little bit of everything. And then this year you bring Stogner back, and he never really progressed from where he was the first time. But now you've got what's the kid's name coming in from Baylor?
Jake Roberts.
I mean, to me, when you're talking offensive line run,
well, you got Devon Mitchell, who's modified stuff. Yeah, but he's offensively, you can come in as a pass catcher. You don't know what he's going to do.
I'm more concerned with the tight end help in the run game. Yeah, and if that can help settle some of these holes where, maybe you're a little bit weak at left guard, but Sexton moving left tackle can be really good, and then you put a tight end on that side, then that helps. And Steve noticed a lot of, it was really easy to read what you were going to do by what Stogner did. If Stogner would move from right to left, and you knew that they were running left, where previous offenses, you would use that, you move the tight end the opposite direction of which way you're going to run because you're dragging a defensive player away from the play. And it seemed like Levy's entire playbook running was to move the offensive lineman into the blocking and never trying to do the other way.
Yeah, and so
not much counters.
What I think would shed a lot of light on this is if we could actually talk to the coordinators. But of course, since the Cincinnati game, we were shut down to have any interviews. The press conferences never included coordinators. So what do we think about that? Do we have hope that we're going to get some coordinator press conferences? Will we get some Mondays where we get to ask them questions? What do you think, Eli? You're in those rooms.
Well, if you're asking about my hope, it's absolutely, because my position, the more access we have, the better. And I genuinely believe the more access that we have, the folks who cover the team 7 days a week in football season and most of the days outside of football season, the better for fans, people who want to know more about this team. And that was a mid-season change where, we would get Jeff Levy and Ted Roof after games, but those are not only short windows, but
you don't have the time to think about what you want to ask. It's either.
Yeah, you're just talking about what just happened at that particular game.
It's really concentrated on the game, and not fairly for the coordinator who's at the podium. They're very much so in the moment, and
right,
whether it's coming down from the booth or haven't had a chance to watch film. So those sessions on a Monday, both removed from the game, but also the benefit of them watching stuff. I mean, so many answers sometimes after a game can be, well, I got to go look at the tape, and that's
right.
reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we certainly lost something when the coordinator pressers went away, and I can say that from the short time we had with Seth Luttrell at the Alamo Bowl, he was really enlightening and a guy I'd love to talk more with and hope that we get to see more of. And then, whatever the determination is on, Zach Alley and his play calling, he is brought in as the de facto defensive coordinator, whatever that means with Brent Venables. This is always going to be a Brent Venables defense here, but he'd be somebody I'd love to hear more from, speak more to, and that's where the hope would be. That's many months away, but we still haven't spoken to Zach Alley yet since he got on campus.
And I could see
I'd
that.
hope
I
to have
could
more
see
insight.
That sheltering, but I hold out hope for you as well as fans. I think we want to see that. We, in fact, almost as a criticism, if they from the position they're in of not having coordinator interviews, you've got to have some visibility with those guys. We criticized Riley for not allowing access to players, and this is the same type of criticism. I think it's a fair one to say if you're not allowing us to critique and ask questions, the hard questions of these guys that make millions of dollars to explain the position and what's going on, you're missing something. Now, my homer hope here is that Brent Venables and company saw the writing on the wall and saw the situation and said, we've got two things going on right now that are kind of on fire. One is we've got a difficult situation with Jeff Levy and the Art Briles situation that erupted after the SMU game, which was one game before Cincinnati when they killed all those press conferences. And the other is our offense isn't where we want it to be. And he may have been making a decision of what is healthy for this team. If we get a lot of very difficult, critical, everyone sitting around criticizing and blaming, we're not going to be productive and get to where we want to be. And maybe it's a different attitude when they're in an SEC environment in a new year with coordinators now he really wants to put forward and is kind of a reset back to where they were 2 years ago to say, here's what we're doing, ask these guys the questions and have them explain the theory behind what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we didn't do, and explain mistakes. Obviously, the nature of those is a lot more of you did this wrong or this wasn't successful, explain it. There's a little bit of you're so good right now, tell me more about it, but that only goes so far because that's not interesting. We see the success. We want to know what are you doing to correct the problems that we're seeing when there are shortcomings, and that's going to be really important to see, especially in a brand new Seth Luttrell run offense, to say where are you? What's going on with the running game? What's going on with what you're seeing? And where do you want to take this team? Because those first few games are pretty easy, and you're not going to learn a lot from them. And you're going to want to see where are you developing and taking it to the next level, because all of a sudden the SEC schedule kicks in, and you've got a level of competition that's going to demand really good high execution, including an opening up of the playbook, and let's see what you really can do and what you can produce. So I'm hopeful that they will.
What was the Seth Luttrell post-game at Alamo? Because we went down there after the game was over. We walked, like a mile back to the hotel, and we did our podcast after, and I really didn't see any coaching post-game talk. When we watched Lebby, especially after a loss, he's just he wasn't the friendliest guy to begin with. He definitely didn't want to share any information about the offense in general. It didn't feel like.
A bit defensive.
Yeah, very defensive, I would say. What was Luttrell like after the game?
He was not made available after the Alamo Bowl.
That's weird.
I'll give him a pass on that. I think, that night, I bet you if that ends in a win, maybe it's a bit different.
Oh, I'm sure.
And in a bowl game, at this point, anymore in college football,
exhibition.
That must be why I didn't see any post game stuff with Seth Luttrell.
there you go.
He was going to come there and say, "Well, you can't turn the ball over 6 times and win a game."
Right.
Now, if we turned it over 4 times, we would have won that game. Because to me,
Which is crazy.
Outside of Farouk fumbling twice, we win that game.
Yeah, you take away those fumbles, and I don't care what Jackson Arnold did, turn the ball over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not giving a pass to Arnold.
No.
A couple bad interceptions.
But you see a glimpse of what I think the media narrative wanted to be, because immediately after that giant throw to Thompson, he was on ESPN. And they're like, Jackson Arnold hits this tremendous pass, and it's like they want a story like that. They want to talk about how great this is and how it's rolling. I'm talking about the media in general, outside of the Oklahoma media. And obviously the fans want to see that. So I think you're right. If we win that game, the whole storyline is this young quarterback takes over, excitement for the next year and what it is to bring, and then a wet blanket got thrown over all of it with additional turnovers that cost us that game. So that probably does change the entire post-game situation.
But I guess as far as like a coordinator availability goes, I think I understand why a program would pull back on it. It probably doesn't serve a program tons either way. But I think, for a fan base, for someone in my position, it's certainly, it's helpful insight. And it's asking, I don't blame Brent Venables when he doesn't have an answer on every little intricacy of the offense, because that's not his domain. He's the head coach, he oversees everything. But he cedes control to whether it's Jeff Lebby or Seth Luttrell. Where it burns me, in addition to just not having, insight and getting asked questions, because we all have questions about the offense, things like that. After the Kansas and Oklahoma State losses, we got Jeff Lebby post-game very briefly, both on the road. Those road games tend to be shorter. So we got him for the periods we got him, but didn't talk to him either Monday. The guys who had to really speak up and who did and who stepped up were Dylan Gabriel and Drake Stoops, who both spoke for like 25 minutes, I remember, after that Oklahoma State game, as in the week after. And they were true professionals, even though they are not. Yeah. And they really stood in for every question. I actually want to say it was after Oklahoma State. Dylan Gabriel gave one of his best media sessions of his whole time at OU, and it wasn't even much about the game. It was just other stuff. And when you really take a step back from that, you're talking about a couple of 22-year-old kids who now are making some money, but they're not paid. Compared to, in that instance, a coordinator is making almost $2 million.
And both those guys are more mature than the offensive coordinator.
However you want to put it, but that when you put it that way, it just.
I think there's a lot of marketing that goes into that too, and they're putting in front of the media the guys who are going to market it good, and maybe this is a virtue and testament to how well adept Brent Venables is in the whole situation to say, we're still in a marketing situation, and he knew the sensitivity of the situation. He knew recruits that he wanted to hang on to. He wanted to put forward a face of, we've got continuity. We know what we're doing. We know what we're building. Here are 2 guys deep in the program who are totally bought in, and he didn't want to have a chance for it to be a distraction to have Lebby out there. This is sort of a
out there. He's still on the team on the bus because
yeah.
He was essentially blaming Drake for not going far enough on the first down. Yeah, that was one of our big problems. Was
blame Farouk.
He blamed. After the Kansas, he blamed Dylan Gabriel for the interception. Was it a pick six?
Yeah.
Early.
One that he threw to Farouk.
Yeah.
And
then the Farouk fumble, he said you threw Farouk under the bus.
He's got a guy playing running back that's a wide receiver.
Totally his fault.
Yeah, and so I really had a major problem with, we say we don't want to hear coach speak for the most part, but in situations where you're coming off a loss, you're doing the opposite of coach speak, and you're kind of throwing your players under the bus. And I don't like that on any level, whether it's NFL or college, regardless. The coordinator doesn't need to say, well, he said on the Kansas one, he said, well, that was an RPO. Dylan probably should have handed the ball off. I mean,
yeah,
come on. And then the Drake Stoops, well, the play I called should have worked essentially, but Drake only took it 2 yards instead of 4 yards or whatever. What's a terrible play call to begin with?
Yeah.
And you need to say that. You need to, as much coach speak as you want to put out there, you should have said, I should have made a better call because that wasn't the right one. And he wouldn't do that. So not getting a coordinator on Mondays when he's in a defensive position anyway wasn't such a bad thing to me as the season went along, because I didn't want to hear from Jeff Lebby, because every time I did, it was something I completely disagreed
No,
with.
I think it was a pretty good move. It remains to be seen how they do this in the transition, but we keep alluding to, or really just naming, what is, be it a homer take, a realist take, whatever, a fan take. We want to see success, and we want to believe that our lack of success was a lot of Jeff Lebby and the Jeff Lebby system, the Jeff Lebby theories, the Jeff Lebby everything. Now, we may be hanging our hat on that too much, or some of us, where we're thinking it's all Jeff Lebby, and it's not. But I don't think any of us are thinking it's going to be roses. We're not thinking we're coming out there with a 2024 offense that's going to exactly light the SEC and all of college football on fire. We do want consistent production. We kind of want an offense that the defense can be proud of, which is the opposite of what we wanted under the Riley regime, which is a defense that the offense could be proud of. We just want excellence in both cases. We want it, though, progressing at a level that makes sense. So we're, I think, all realistic about what we should be expecting coming into the first year of the SEC. So let's transition to talk about that. Early on, we have spring ball to go through and everything else, but how do we think OU is going to fare in the SEC in this upcoming year? What do we think it's going to look like?
I think if you get decent to good offensive line play, there's no limit for the offense, to be honest with you. Unless Jackson Arnold just ends up being a turnover machine where he's just 3-4 picks a game, makes Rattler-esque decisions constantly. I don't see that being the case. I think he's going to grow immensely from that. And the talent at receiver, the incoming talent at tight end, running back talent that's already there. Like I said, if the offensive line can just produce at a mid-level tier SEC barometer, I think the offense could be off the charts.
I think if the defense can hold most teams under 24 to 28 range, that alone should win you 7 or 8 games.
Oh, if you can hold someone to 24, you should win.
Well, you should, but you're gonna have a freshman quarterback. Well, he's gonna be a sophomore because he lost his.
But 24 is not anything anymore.
Right, but we had plenty of games last year that the offense wasn't scoring over 31 or something like the last 5 games.
If the defense can hold to 24 points, we should be in every game, have a chance to win every game. We have a chance to be 12-0. We have a chance to be, 8-4 is tough to say if we held them every game to 24. I don't see 4 losses.
I think if you're holding everybody at 24, you're in the 9-3, 10-2 at minimum range.
At minimum.
But, obviously there's going to be some games you may play Ole Miss because they just bought half of college football, apparently. And they did buy a bunch of defensive guys. But
yeah, that's true.
If their offense puts up, 38 on you, you can lose that game because your offense isn't quite there yet. But a lot of games I'm especially optimistic with Bowman and Stutzman coming back, which I know that's only 2 players, but that's the 2 major players at their level of the defense.
I think you had Terry. That's right in the middle.
If your defensive line, you've got a couple of the freshmen that don't have to be incredible, but they're rotational guys. That if you, like Steve said, you got a Tommy Harris that comes and disrupts,
which could
5
be
plays a game. If you have 5 plays a game from a David Stone that can disrupt something. Well, where we finished in the second in the country in turnovers or something along those lines, or third, somewhere around there. And that was, you got all these guys come back with even more experience. That was having, a bad spot with Kanik, not fulfilling what we hoped he would do.
Pretty average D-line play from
average, yeah. Bothroyd never
a lot of
off.
pressure, but
without
not
a sack
getting
this
home.
season, didn't he? I don't think Bothroyd had a sack.
He might have had
season.
one, but he had like
Early.
8
Yeah,
the year before.
right.
Yeah.
So if you figure that Bowman and Stutzman don't take a step back, and they're going to just be as good as they were last year, and then you add Peyton Bowen coming in,
Getting better.
I don't think Reggie Pearson did that great of a job when he was in there. You're going to have a healthy, hopefully, if we get a healthy Gentry.
You know what you're getting from Woody.
Woody's on the other side.
I think Woody Washington, I think him coming back was really big, just in that whatever you think about Woody Washington, one, he was an important leader on that defense, but instead of having to replace your number one cornerback and making Gentry that number one guy, he's your number two, and Dejon Malone coming in from San Diego State gets to compete for one of those spots, and if he's better than either of those two, great. If he's on par, you have rotation.
Harrington at the Cheetah is going to be a huge
Yep.
comeback. If he can, the way he started the season, if he comes in and you've got between him and McCullough and Dolby in the Cheetah, there's all kinds of things you can do on defense with those three guys, running in and out of there. I'm very excited about being able to keep teams under 24 and 28.
What do you think, Eli? First year of the SEC.
I mean, points per game, I couldn't throw a number out, but I think you guys just hit on all the depth that they have. Like, you look at cornerback, you got 2 returning starters, you have a starting guy from San Diego State, and then all the freshmen that played a year ago, they were excited about in that 23 class. They'll be in that depth. You look at the safeties. Billy Bowman's back. Peyton Bowen another year. Robert Spears-Jennings they really like in that program. There's more there. Linebacker position, we know they've liked Kip Lewis. We know they like Kobe McKenzie.
It was huge to keep Kobe. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not
There's still one more
yet.
round, but to keep him through this point, I think it's massive.
And Jaron Kanik, he certainly tailed off at the back end of the year, but you bring him in for another year of development, another offseason, all that. There's depth there. That's the important part. There's depth. And up front, it was unspectacular line play, and I know we always look at sacks, and so then you look at the edge rushers. But inside, I think bringing back Jacob Lacey and DeJoun Terry, that's...
Downs is back, too.
And that's just
Downs
a core.
had a
And then on the
great
edge, Ethan
4
Downs
games
is great on the edge.
Yeah.
The same way you would have been talking about Rondell Bothroyd and Trace Ford a year ago, you'd be talking about Caden Willard now, the guy coming in from Miami, Ohio. You're projecting, but that is we just ran through that whole defense, and on offense, the skill spots you feel good about, but the offensive line, we can talk about all the turnover. On defense, they're coming back pretty set. And
I think
to me,
9 of 10 leading tacklers are back.
I think that is massive when you go into the SEC. I mean, I don't know, if I asked you guys, would you rather go into the SEC with an intact defense or a fully intact, legit offensive line? I don't know what the answer would be.
I think the defense.
But I think going in with that, I mean, the difference of if we were talking in December where Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, Woody Washington all leave, and maybe those 2 guys up front, or 3 of the 5, take your pick. You're talking about a way less stable defense and a way less stable picture for 2024. At least you got that. You can worry right now about the offensive line. You can have whatever concerns you have about a first-year starting quarterback. But the defense coming back in the state it is, from where it could have been, because Danny Stutzman was pretty ready to go. And there were guys, I think it helps to be in this year of NIL to retain guys who don't necessarily have great draft grades, who could come back and improve it a year, or just spend another year in college. That's more lucrative than being an undrafted free agent or a late-round pick. The defense being intact, I think, is the biggest selling point for the Sooners.
Yeah, it is huge. And Woody himself, I'm not sure if he has the second most starts coming back as a defender in the SEC or just as a corner, but that's still
It's a big
that's a lot of games.
And you still got the possibility of development, because we see what Danny did last year. Well, Brent's first year, and then you see what Danny looked like this year, and he looked like 2 different players. And if Kanik or Kip, I think Kip Lewis is probably going to get that spot, but if Kip makes that jump, I mean, at the Arizona game,
It can get better.
in the Arizona Bowl game, Kip was phenomenal, and he got injured and came back and was gimpy and still looked great.
Well, and Stutz and Billy are going to get better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
They're not going to get worse unless due to injury.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about two guys that were competing for the top award in their positions, and likely
Peyton Bowen
Should-
Eli. I'm thinking of Eli
Bowman.
Bowen's coming in, but Billy Bowman.
Billy Bowman.
He got screwed out of Thorpe
Yeah.
because stat for stat against the three guys that were finalists, it wasn't even close to me. He should have won the Thorpe.
yeah.
We talked about that on a previous pod. But
Yeah. So you got a lot of
I'm excited about
weapons
the
there, and I think that's an interesting thing that you said, Eli, about defense versus offense. You know, you can win, you can rely on either one to keep you in games. Obviously, rewinding the clock back in the Riley era, we were in a position where the offense always could win you a game. I don't care who you're playing, they could win you a game. We are now in a position, I think, where the defense could always win us a game. Now, obviously, you want to be at the level, OU wants to be at the level where they have both an offense and defense that can do it. You know there's going to be a game where one of those two units is out of place because the other side of the field, that coach, that scheme is going to have figured something out and it's going to be working against you. And that's going to be the game where you need that other unit to come through for you. Either one can win you every game potentially. The defense can keep us in every game if they can perform the way we think they can. I think you hit on something that's important, Jay, when you say people are probably underestimating our offensive potential. Now, it could go one way or the other, high risk, high reward. It doesn't have to work out great. It could be bad, but it could be really good if it works. And if it works with this defense, it's going to be phenomenally great. Similar to back in prior regimes with our offense, if the defense could just have gotten their stuff together, we were in the playoffs. We could have gone anywhere.
The turnovers tainted his performance so much in the bowl game, but as your first true start against a very good team,
experienced team too.
He was 400 yards. I mean, yes, he made some bad throws. Yes, he made some bad decisions, some bad luck on some fumbles. But, man, if you can just, maybe it's a homer take, if you can blindly kind of
I think you're right, though.
cloud that up, we're talking about a true freshman that absolutely lit up a team.
And it's important to say the experience because if you look back at teams we've struggled against, it has been, and COVID played a big part in this, teams that really shouldn't be that good, that were better than they should have been because of experience, because of age of players, and there's something to be said about that in college, that was the thing. It's hard to overcome that. And no one gives Arizona, because the name Arizona, enough credit for being a really talented and experienced team that he was going up against. So there are a lot of bright spots there, I think, a lot of things to be positive about. And again, it can go either way. The defense doesn't have to gel and be great, but boy, it's going to be really surprising if the defense isn't really good, I think, and very competitive. One of the things
It would be very disappointing if the defense isn't.
It actually is a huge red
a
flag
top
for
25
the entire
opponent.
program, including the leadership.
There's just
if they're
too many
not.
people back.
So one of the things that's another point of optimism is what on paper should have been our most difficult, or one of the most difficult games and opponents, now doesn't look that tough, and that's Alabama. That is a lot up in the air about exactly what the Alabama team is going to be. They have lost a lot of players. They've lost the GOAT of college football coaching. Now, I think they've got a good coach in the new hire. I think that they've got a lot. It's Alabama. Yes, they can reload, but it's really tough, especially in that first year, to keep everything going and hitting on all cylinders. So if you look at that schedule got meaningfully less difficult with the changes that happened just with Alabama. It's still going to be a tough
It
schedule.
got more difficult with Ole Miss.
Probably
and their
so.
influx of
Probably
players.
so, but I don't think that replaces how much is lost in the Alabama situation. Remains to be seen. They could be. I mean, they could keep the machine going, and DeBear just gets everything working just like clockwork. But that's a tough act to follow, not just from the fact that expectations are so high, but just the fact that you're following a team that got to the playoffs. You're following a team that had all of that history, and they've lost a lot of players. They've lost a lot. If they're going to be good, if you say, when are they going to be good? When are they going to be great again? When are they going to be at the top of football? You wouldn't predict it's going to be in 2024. You're going to think it's going to take a couple of years for him to get that rolling. So that's a helpful thing as far as the schedule goes.
What do you think?
I mean, Alabama's going to be one of the best mysteries of college football next year going in, just because we don't know. Is everyone they lost going to hurt them? I mean, they lost a lot, but they retained a lot. They brought plenty in the portal. Plenty of guys came with, Kalen DeBoer and all that.
Uh-huh.
They'll probably still come to Norman with Jalen Milroe, who will enter the year. I don't know where he'd be if you looked at betting odds right now, but a Heisman contender. And if, we talk about development year to year, he's a guy who looked very good at the end of this year, who could take a jump.
Not at the beginning, at the end, yeah.
But no, they're a complete mystery, and they are undoubtedly, whether it's perception-wise or what they lost, diminished without Nick Saban. There's no two ways about it. But that end of the season gauntlet as it appeared when Nick Saban was here and we saw it drop with Alabama and LSU to close the season, that's still going to be scary. And no matter who's coaching the Tide, but maybe it opens some door. And we're going to be talking about a really different college football world by that point. I mean, whether Oklahoma's SEC championship contention, sitting here right now, you'd say they should be in range for a 12-team playoff. Whether they are, at 5, 6, 7, 8 by that time of the year, or 14th and playing for, almost playing games for the playoff, that's what you're going to be talking about. And so they're going to be big games. And the fact that Alabama could be because we're talking about Alabama, could be any sort of dented coming to Norman next November, should add some optimism, some excitement. But we can't know what they're going to look like yet. But I think we know there's going to be two pretty pivotal games.
If I were going to circle a game that I think is the most concerning, it would be at LSU to close the season, because it's at LSU versus at home against Alabama, and partly because of Alabama's situation. That's going to be an opportunity, though, for OU on a big stage to really separate themselves. So if they're in a spot where they've got to earn that 11th, 12th position or keep it. They could be 14 looking to make the jump, or they could be 11 trying to retain it. That's going to be a big opportunity. And as perverse and bad as it is, you might be looking at a quality loss against your competition who has a meaningless win, and we go down to Baton Rouge and barely lose a game that's an epic game that everyone watched on TV because it was such a great matchup. That could be helpful for OU. Hopefully we're not in that position, but you're right, there's a good chance that we are, for sure.
You can also look at, kind of back-to-back wins to close the season of beating an Alabama and going into Baton Rouge and beating LSU.
Oh,
and you can just place OU smack dab right in the center of
everything.
This is the SEC, and here we are. I mean,
yep.
It can go the other way.
It could go the other way. You could lose to Texas, and your redemption is a tremendous end of the season. You could beat Texas, and you're hanging on with a quality loss against LSU.
I think the good part too, we kind of used to make fun of this a little bit, being in the Big 12. A good loss, kind of like you talked about. I mean, if you go out and lose at Ole Miss, and it's close, and you fought hard, it's just not that bad.
It's not the same.
You go lose at Iowa State, it's bad.
Yep.
You go lose at Kansas State, it's not great.
It never got the respect.
You just don't. Yeah, you just can't.
Mm-hmm.
You can't lose when you're in the Big 12 at all, right? And it is, whether it should be or not, it can be a respectable loss in the SEC.
Maybe one of the biggest problems going into the next year, not necessarily a problem, but something to watch for that we've all talked about, was how bad the officiating has been against us for the last 2 years. Steve was on Eli's podcast talking about that, but kind of hedging on that. It wasn't necessarily the officials had a bias against us, but maybe because we were leaving the conference, whatever. What's it going to be like being the new kid on the block in the SEC, and how, when we watch just SEC games, we see what the corners get away with. The there's a lot more tugging, there's a lot more holding that doesn't get called in, LSU
Not that we
versus
disagree
Bama.
with it.
Oh, I definitely
Yeah.
don't disagree.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times you're like, let these guys play instead of a bunch of ticky-tack, whereas in other leagues, Big 12, you see a guy just maybe put his hand on a hip and give a little tug and it's a flag. But they let them play generally more in the SEC. What's it going to be like for us being the new kid on the block officiating-wise? Is it going to be we're not used to the physicalness of the skill position type stuff? Our receiver is going to be not knowing what to look for as far as getting penalties called in your favor, or is it going to be a bunch of throwing your hands up because that guy grabbed me, I should have been a call, and it's not in that league because it's a tougher, more
And our DBs not going to be handsy
right,
enough.
yeah. So that's another thing, and not just the bias part of it, which that's an aspect the last 2 years that we haven't liked, but I'm interested to see what it's going to be like on that in the SEC.
So it sounds like you'd welcome like the no call on Drake Stoops in the end zone.
No.
Just more handsy.
I think that gets
What an
called.
interesting twist,
that gets
yeah.
called in
Every-
90 other games.
Yeah.
being played.
No, he
probably
likes
does.
legitimate calls to
Yeah.
get called. That's a really interesting twist on that question, though, Lucas. To
and
say,
I don't want to go in thinking, they're going to screw us over.
No,
because
no.
When Missouri went from the Big 12 to the SEC, they made 2 title games back to back, right? Did they start their first 2
Correct,
years? They
their
were in the
first 2
SEC
years.
title.
I don't think
A&M never got there, but
there's no interest wherever the refereeing biases or conspiracies begin. It is not in anyone's interest, most of all the SEC, to screw Texas and OU on their early part.
that's what I would think, especially with a
That's a good
12-team
point.
playoff, because there's a chance
Yeah.
the SEC can get 4 teams.
Right. Well, I think that, to me, and I've always been a little bit more agnostic on it, I think that the quality of officiating is higher in the SEC. So I think the quality is going to be better, and you don't have that variance that comes with just not as quality of officiating that you get in the Big 12 and other lesser leagues.
It just means more.
It just means more. But that's a good twist on it to think what you bring up, Lucas. Are we prepared to execute and do the little time? I mean, they're not even X's and O's. They're the sub-X's, sub-O's of how you perform as a DB, how you perform as a receiver, knowing what will and won't get called. These guys and their coaches have experience knowing what does and doesn't get called. We are going to have a learning curve to figure that out so that we know what we can and can't get by with. And it works to the extent of don't expect a call when you're not going to get it in this league, and know what you can get by with and be physical enough because you've seen it at the top levels, and we really saw it out of Penix in the semifinal game where you've got tight coverage. You're going to have to be as good as possible against some of these guys because that pass is going to be on the money. When you're playing the top level of football, if you can get by with a little bit more handsy work as a cornerback and do it in such a way that doesn't get called, then that's important, and that's a skill set that we're going to have to be able to have and exert. If we don't, it's marginal stuff that won't go your way that could cost you a football game. One big completion can be the difference between winning and losing. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that aspect of it. Can we adapt to the style of play and the style of officiating that it is in the SEC?
I think as it relates to those like late season games, obviously where OU stands at that point and where the teams they're playing stand at that point will matter. But I think before you get to Alabama and LSU, both on the schedule and in projecting anything of where OU will be, it's got to start with taking care of the games before it.
Yeah.
And that's going to Auburn, handling Tennessee and South Carolina here, Ole Miss and Missouri. Those are all teams that should be at or below Oklahoma's, or somewhere in there. We'll find out in the fall. But that's where Oklahoma's going to get there. They'll be at 8 to 10 wins, or 7, 8,
Yeah,
6, 7, 8, 10
wins on LSU. You're going to be 8 to 10 wins
Correct.
based on how you
and then it'll determine, if OU is in range of the playoff come the end of the season and they lose a 50-50 game at LSU, that's life in the SEC. If they win those games and that gets them in, that's the 12-team playoff, and that's the boost to the SEC. But it's going to be their season, to me, will be defined by what they do in those earlier parts of the season. And I guess you'd probably pick Texas, Alabama, and LSU as the three biggest games on the schedule that are going to be the tough ones that might determine if they're on the edge or dictate if they're a playoff team or a 9-3 team. But to me, I want to see how they hang next year. If you're talking about bigger picture, how do they hang with LSU, Ole Miss, when they have revamped through the portal? And fairly, the last few years, they've probably been what Oklahoma should be aspiring to, at least early on in the SEC, which is a 9-10 win team that contends.
Competitive team, yeah.
Contends, but initially, right now they've been off the mark of the very best in the conference. Missouri, upstart last year, they've invested a lot in the portal. They should be good next year. I think most OU fans would consider that. I don't know about a bellwether. I might upset the people sitting around me, but as in the idea of last year they had a better finish than Oklahoma. That should be what the aspiration should be. And in a 12-team playoff scenario, that would be good enough to get the Sooners there. So
entering the SEC is a brand new thing for OU. Speaking of brand new things, sellout crowd is a brand new thing. So last time you were on the pod, you were a member of the Tulsa World. You were in older journalism. Now you're in new journalism. You're about 6 months into sellout crowd. Tell us about sellout crowd. How's it going? And what is it like now? What do you expect going forward? Not just for the football season, but here in the football off season and all the other sports going on.
Feels like ages ago I was on with you guys, but no, it's been a new beginning. And as we spoke about off air, we jumped in. We launched September 1st. Oklahoma played its first football game this past season, September 2nd. So it was really, really new, and we dove headfirst in. And we had, wasn't covering a football season wasn't new to myself, certainly not to Barry Trammell, Jenny Carlson, Garen Emig, colleagues in Stillwater, but doing it with Sellout Crowd and a new venture was new. And we really powered through the season, and now we're sort of hitting a slower point, a point where we can, I say, figure out what we're going to do, but
you getting a rhythm now? Is it kind of
we're absolutely in a rhythm, and it's now the freedom we all kind of sought when we went to Sellout Crowd and doing something different. This is the time of year we get to do it, and so we're figuring out all the exciting stuff with our new resources, with the freedom we have to do some different things in terms of storytelling, in terms of engaging with people, OU fans. In Stillwater, it's OSU fans, and OKC, it's Thunder fans. Really finding our place, because we do things, differently perhaps than we did at newspapers. We do things differently than some of the recruiting sites in each of the college towns that do their thing. So we're finding our place, but certainly like the storytelling element and doing that from writing, podcasting to video, that's everything we're exploring now. And the fun part is getting to do that, like myself, on a staff with people like Barry Trammell, Garen Emig, Jenny Carlson. It's a fun crew.
What's been the most surprising aspect of all of it for you?
I'd say surprising has probably been, at least at first, the reception, because we all took a risk. Again, comparing myself in any context to Barry, Jenny, Garen, they've all been here combined close to 100 years in this state. But it's that we all took a chance, and I don't think anybody knew what it would be. And so initially it was the reception, and we have it either in audience numbers or just what we hear. I mean, I don't think Barry Trammell goes to the supermarket. I know he loves Crest, and he can't go there without someone stopping him, either praising him for what he's done or wondering where he is. There's a lot of people who think Barry Trammell got laid off at the Oklahoman, and that wasn't the case, but it's directing people to what they're doing and watching people discover what we're doing and seeing people respond to it. It is different. If you subscribe to the Oklahoman or the Tulsa World for the last 20 years, what we're doing now is, elements of the same. You can still read Barry Trammell's 4, 5, 6 columns a week because he writes like no one I've ever been around. But we're doing new stuff, and I think that's the exciting part is bringing stuff we've all been doing at different places in the state. I hope some of it is familiar to people, but the new twist on it and seeing people respond to that has been really exciting.
What's any pivots or any changes you anticipate in the next few months going into the summer months and then the football season?
I think, as it relates to OU, I'm on an OU pod. Like it's finding ways to engage the fan base in different ways. And for me, I was at a newspaper, I'm still primarily writing, so it starts there, but it's video, it's responding to things. It's, even this week, Garen Hatchett commits to OU in the past. It was easy. It was a story and you were done. Maybe you chase down the family, write a feature, and I'm still doing a lot of that stuff, but it's also sitting down with Sam Mays for 10 minutes, not doing a full-length thing, not sitting down to a full podcast, but Sam watches the tape. He's got his expertise. I've got mine, and we sit down and we talk about it, and boom, it's on YouTube, and that's just a bit different than what we were all doing at newspapers, and kind of it's small thing, but the exciting stuff we're getting up to and working on and trying to build off of.
One guy you left out when you're talking about all that is Coach Stoops.
Indeed.
I enjoy seeing Bob doing the Zooms he did George Kittle last week, and that's something locally that we're interested in because obviously his dad was a coach here. He played at Norman. Obviously the success in the NFL, but to see Bob interact is not on a press conference level.
It's a different Coach Stoops.
Being
right?
able to talk to people and just relate to them in a different way than it would be him in front of a dais doing his, coach speak or whatever has been really cool for me to see because that's something that I didn't know that would even be possible to see in local media. But, Bob Stoops is considered local media to me now because he's doing stuff like that, and that's really cool.
And I can say, in terms of content, in terms of big names, it's just the tip of the iceberg with Bob Stoops, and I wish my Rolodex was as good as him. I've never had a Rolodex because
You're too young.
I'm way too young, but no, I mean, and that's even the cool bit too of the collaboration of having, Bob Stoops in our circle and what we can do with that and the power that kind of comes. It's as much about the individual, and we were all hired as sort of individual creators who brought what we brought, but then suddenly we're on a team, and it's everything Barry, Jenny, Garen bring. It's what Bob brings. We're gonna have a whole lot more. So it really is it's the individual end and us bringing our personalities and things like that. But then you got the collaborative nature, and I'd like to think we're talking about some of the best people in Oklahoma sports media. There's a robust across the state, across outlets, incredible media here. But doing it together is something special.
So you're definitely. It sounds like you've got a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm about what's left to come. And so has there been a lot of learning that you guys have done and evolution in this first season? I mean, it's trial by fire here as you launch right before the football season. It's going to be interesting to see you hit your stride then coming back into the next football season, which is obviously one of the big drivers. But you got the Thunder, what are they? The third right now in the West. They're pressing for second. Who knows where they'll end up? But that could be a big end for you guys here in the spring into the summer. So that could be pretty exciting too.
I think so. And I mean, I think about the Thunder taking off with what would probably be their best contending team since the Russ and KD era. Mm-hmm. There's OU going to this new era. To me, Oklahoma State, the Big 12 in football, I think is about to be what the Big 12 has been in basketball, where every night you don't know. It is such a top-to-bottom talented league in hoops. Football, you could debate, is it going to be at the SEC Big 10 level? Probably not. But that's why I'm excited to watch those games on Thursday night when the Big 12 is just off the hook. And I think it is going to be, I think that's what
the high school football you're saying. Okay, yeah.
Big 12 after dark.
Well, look, I know everybody sitting around here will be tuning in to watch an Arizona Iowa State game on a Thursday night when there's nothing else on and it's exciting.
Yeah.
You will be. That's what people bet on it.
Yeah, I'm not being sarcastic. I mean, we talked about that in a previous pod. How much interest will we have in the Big 12 since we're leaving?
I think it's just going to be fun.
And we said on game days for us, we won't be checking K-State, Iowa State scores when we're in Auburn. But on Thursdays and Fridays, heck yeah, we'll be paying attention to that stuff.
And perhaps what's cool to me about them adding the West Coast schools, or I guess they're not quite coastal, but time zones. Yeah. A late Big 12 game after a long day of SEC football is exactly, maybe it'll replace the Pac-12 after dark. Point being, it feels like we're starting something new and exciting, just as all these teams in this state are starting something new and exciting. And that's where, all the resources we have, the things we're doing, podcast video-wise, that is different than just the traditional writing, that all of us have done for so many years, feels so exciting, and we definitely have a lot of good stuff in store.
I can't wait to read some of Barry's stuff when he's going to colleges he's never been to before. I mean, has he been to Ole Miss or Mississippi State or any of those schools? It'll be interesting to read travel blog type stuff for Barry when he's getting to experience a completely different culture of football, honestly.
Promise you, Barry Trammell's travel blog after his trip to Columbia, Missouri, will be something else.
You're going to take him to some good sites?
I've got a lot of good places.
You got some favorites out there?
In Columbia, Missouri, got plenty of favorites.
Well, speaking of favorites, tell me, what is your favorite Star Wars movie?
In what order?
Let's say the order that you watched them.
Well, I think when I finally see my first Star Wars movie, I've got to start. Help me out here with the fourth.
4, yeah.
Wow. So,
see, I got that right.
So you have no credibility because you've never watched Star Wars before. But we all know that Empire Strikes Back is the absolute best Star Wars movie, no doubt about it. It's a lock. And speaking of locks, we, as you know, do the locks of the week.
That's very well done.
The realest deal, locks of the week.
And the locks of the week are brought to you by 5 Star Concrete. David and Josh are a local business servicing the metro area. From patios, sidewalks, driveways, shops, and more, call them or text them at 405-306-3014 or check them out on Facebook, 5 Star Concrete. So this is our last locks of the week, and it is Super Bowl week, so we get to talk about who our locks are for the Super Bowl. We've got the 49ers against the Swifties, and I'm hopeful that our long national nightmare may be over, that we may actually get an end to the Chiefs' reign. We'll
think
see.
The deep state is going to let that happen?
So I don't know, but as the writers are writing this script that includes a Trump-Biden election coming up, that it just is fitting that the Chiefs and the Taylor Swift is all intermingled into all of this.
Pfizer.
Pfizer's got a role. It's just it's confusing, but I've got my pick. Do you guys have your pick for the 49ers are giving 2 points to the Chiefs. It's in Las Vegas, so it's going to be an exciting Super Bowl from that standpoint. You've got a lot of tech bros that are going to be making the trek down to Vegas, I'm sure, to watch the 49ers. You've got all of the Swift Army that's going to march their way west and try to take the title.
You know what university has the most players participating in the
Hold on. It's got to be
Bowl?
like one of those really good ones, right? Which one is it?
I think it's Oklahoma.
It's the University of
We've
Oklahoma.
got 6.
That's 2 consecutive years.
2 consecutive
That's right.
years.
That's right. And
Leading all
How
of
many
college
players
football in
Alabama have?
they've never had a player score a point in a
Interesting.
Super Bowl.
Interesting.
Ever.
Really?
It's almost like they get top-end talent that's almost maxed out of high school.
Yeah. It kind of
And
makes
then
you
they
wonder.
just kind of fizzle.
It's like we should put in for a few national titles that we deserve but didn't get. No, we're not that way. We're not going to do that. Well, I've got my pick. I'll lead us off. I've got the 49ers. I got them covering the 2 points. They're going to cover 2. 2 is a pretty good number because obviously just a field goal, if tied game and a field goal wins it for them or something like that. So I don't know how the game's going to go. I'm hoping for a good, exciting game. I'm hoping one that hits my numbers, if you know what I mean. But I've got the 49ers covering 2. What do you got, Lucas?
Oh, it's so hard to bet against Patrick Mahomes. The guy's played in 6 straight AFC championship games, and this is his 4th Super Bowl. Man, as much as I hate to see it, I think the Chiefs win.
Got the Chiefs covering with 2, plus 2. Lucas, I'm sorry, Jay, what do you got?
I'm not so much going for someone as I'm going to say I just can't see Brock Purdy being a Super Bowl championship quarterback. I watched him play too many games in the Big 12. The NFL is a quarterback-driven league. The 2 quarterbacks, I don't think there's even a comparison. And again, I just can't see Brock Purdy winning the Super Bowl.
So you got Chiefs. All right. Eli, what do you got?
Stepping in for Connor here? Can I reflect on his record at least? I hope.
Yeah, well, he's got a pretty good record.
He's
56%?
Yeah, he was our number 2 on the season.
Would like this pick to. I hope he'd take my pick to tag along with his.
Uh-huh.
An Arsenal fan, but that's a different story. I am hesitant to pick against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and all the Taylor Swift energy. I don't go against Taylor Swift very often, but I just I think like the Super Bowl rematch of a few years ago, as much as you're right, I could not have seen Brock Purdy literally, 2 football seasons ago? 3, I guess, at this point, winning a Super Bowl, but here he is. And what actually really concerned me was the fact that the Chiefs, that second half against the Ravens, as much as it was about Mahomes getting to another Super Bowl and all that, no points, like 60 some odd yards after halftime. I know a lot of that was about the Ravens defense, but the Niners bring a defense. I might regret picking against the Chiefs, but I'll take the Niners with.
All right. So last week, to catch us up, I and Connor were 1-1. Lucas and Jay were 0-2. So not a good finish to the end for the locks of the week. Now we all took Baltimore, and so that was part of the problem there. But
so we bet against the Chiefs and see what happened.
Yeah, that's true.
And I would like San Francisco to win. Just Trent Williams, I feel like.
Yeah,
you got 4 students. Oh, no, that's the Chiefs. Got 4 students.
Chiefs, yeah.
2 on San Fran, 4 on the Chiefs.
But Trent Williams has been, by all accounts, a top 5 offensive lineman in NFL history. It looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy is incredible.
Give the guy a ring.
I
agree. That'd be great to see. It's going to be a great story either way. It's great to see Sooners in the game. That's really cool. That is something to be proud of.
I have nothing against Swifty.
No, me either.
But I would prefer a San Francisco win. Just because Kansas City's getting a little old.
Yeah,
they're the new Patriots essentially with the public.
Yeah,
everybody's tired of seeing them.
Yeah, it's funny that they have some of that same bandwagon effect. Tom Brady brought a celebrity status. Obviously, Taylor Swift brings a different celebrity status as a very intimate fan of the Chiefs and brings a different fan base. And so it's probably unfair that people are looking down on that group and blaming the Chiefs for the fact that they've got all these brand new money people into football for the first time ever. It's like, I'll relate it back to the Thunder. When the Thunder first land in Oklahoma City and they've got an all-star lineup and Oklahoma City people are like, well, this is easy. We're in the NBA Finals every year. This is great. So these Swifties, they need to understand that you don't always win. In fact, you can go for long spells in the NFL and not even sniff a title. So.
Somebody posted a hilarious short video on X or Twitter. This Cleveland fans just beside themselves. Like our whole life, we've been rooting for our team just to get somewhere, and all these Swiftie fans are like, "Hey, we're in the Super Bowl. We just started a couple weeks ago."
You think Swifties know much about like Todd Haley and Romeo Crennel and Herm Edwards, that era?
Yeah, I'm sure they are very well informed about all of that. They go way, way back. Well, I don't know. We'll see. We'll be back in a future pod in maybe a week or two. Hopefully have you back on, Eli. We're really delighted to have your insights.
Appreciate it, man.
We want to have you back as often as you can. I know your schedule's really busy, but definitely would like to get you back right before the start of the season. If not before that, it'd be nice around the spring football time.
But something. I know I'm hard to get, but I love coming on with you guys.
You're a hard ticket to land, much like Taylor Swift. So you're kind of our Taylor Swift there. Well, that'd be great. It'd be great to have you on and get some insights going on. But until then, Boomer.
Sooner.